Alright, I'll just kind of go over how the WhiteLabel login system works for LootLocker. So, basically, at the start of the game, the client wants to log in. The client has the username and password. So the client will make a request to the backend that has the domain key and request to log in, right, with the username, password, and there's this variable remember. If the remember is true, the login validation will be valid for I think 30 days for LootLocker. Okay. And in the response, it will return this token. Now, in the HTTP response, this will also be called session token. And this can be stored on the client side safely because the client cannot actually use this token to make any meaningful API calls, right? But what we can do is we can, on the back end, also call, after we get this token, call for this request authentication. And this will use that token to authenticate using the API key. Remember, the backend has the domain key and the API key, but the player does not. So we can make this request, and in the response, this will return a session token. And this session token is what we can actually use to basically make LootLocker calls on the backend. Because after the authentication, we get this session token. We cannot return this to the client side because this should be saved on the backend. So I guess for us, Beamable, we'll save this on Beamable. And then after that, any LootLocker call that we make, like saving, loading, it's going to go through the backend that has the session token and use this session token to make the calls, right? So at no point in time, the player will have this session token, so they can't really make any of this important calls, like saving data, loading data, through the session token. You're talking about the website integration. So if you do log in on the website using the WhiteLabel login system, right? After you log in, we just have to basically authenticate and store this session token on the Beamable side, right? Because once Beamable has this, when we're in game, we can just check if Beamable has this session token through like backend call. Check if the Beamable has the session token, and if it does, if the session token is valid through some LootLocker API call, right? If this session token is valid, we don't really need to ask them to log in or anything. We can just go straight into the game, right? So ideally, what we would want is we just log in on the website, and we'll never really have to ask for the username and password on the game side, right? Like in-game UI, we would never really have to do that. We just log in on the website, store this on Beamable, and then basically go from there. And when the player starts, we just transition into the session because the session already exists. So that's basically where I'm at. I have already implemented all these backend calls for requesting login, for getting the response, and requesting authentication. All I have to do is make a system for saving this session token on the backend as well, so we don't have to go through the whole process every time, right? Once we have that, I will also have to make sure that, because for now, the game creator stuff, Game Creator is using the in-game SDK, right? The in-game SDK has the API key in the editor, which is not good. So what we really have to do is make sure whenever these are called from Game Creator, it goes through the backend and not through the in-game SDK, right? It has to go through my module of the API. That's basically where I'm at, and after I get this done, I'll check if the saving and loading works, and when it does, I'll also integrate the saving NFT tokens into LootLocker, and also basically add a system for CZV to acquire those data. Alright, so that's basically where I'm at now.